district is honored to host today's panel discussion. I believe the title is Trailblazing Women in the Judiciary, Challenges and Insights, with 3 of our circuit judges, including our circuit's chief judge. And the panel will be introduced shortly, but before I do that, on behalf of the panel, or excuse me, on behalf of the district, I want to thank the Federal Bar Association for the Western District of Washington for planning this program, and particularly all of the hard work that our moderator, today's moderator, Cynthia Jones, has done for today's event. For those of you who may not know the brilliant and stylish Cynthia Jones, she is an individual who works tirelessly with our district and the Bar Association to bring you amazing programming and events. If you attended a recent bench bar event, there's a very good chance that the idea for the event, the organization of the events, and the execution of the events was carried out by Cynthia Jones. Judge Jones, our own Judge Jones, said in a recent article about Cynthia, she has an adept ability to bring people together and an unfailing dedication to mentoring other lawyers and students. As always, Cynthia, thank you very much for all of your work, and we appreciate you moderating today. With that, let me introduce first our circuit judge, or one of our circuit judges, Judge Ana de Alba, who will introduce the panel for us today. Judge de Alba is one of our newer circuit judges. She assumed office, or was appointed office, or confirmed in, what's the official word? Obtained her commission, that's the word, why is it escaping me? On November 15, 2023, and previously served as a United States District Judge for the Eastern District of California. And as I was mentioning here amongst the circuit judges, we always like to hear that our circuit judges, when they have district judge experience, because they know what it feels like to be a district judge and kind of what we do here in the trenches sometimes. So thank you very much. With that, Judge Alba, if you don't mind.
Good afternoon, everyone. It is my honor to get to introduce these 3 trailblazing women. As the newest member of the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals, I cannot tell you how wonderful it is to be able to walk in. For example, today we had a court meeting and see the 3 of them there. Everything they have done, all the doors that they have opened, all of the kind emails and mentoring that I have received. It's just amazing. And today, in fact, we mentioned that we think we're the 4 Latinas on the Ninth Circuit. So with that, let me give you a little bit of background about each of our judges here. So we'll start with the Honorable Mary H. Murguia. She is the Chief Judge of the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals. Judge Murguia is the first Latina to serve as Chief Judge of a federal appellate court. She is the Ninth Circuit's 12th Chief Judge and the 2nd woman to hold that position on the court. She was nominated by President William J. Clinton for a new judgeship for the United States District of Arizona and was confirmed in October of 2000. Judge Murguia was the first Latina to serve on the District of Arizona. She served in that capacity until she was elevated to the Circuit Court after nomination by President Barack Obama and confirmed by the Senate on December 22nd, 2010. A native of Kansas City, Kansas, Judge Murguia received her bachelor's degrees in both art and science from the University of Kansas in 1982 and her Juris Doctor from the University of Kansas School of Law in 1985. Prior to coming onto the federal bench, Judge Murguia was an assistant district attorney for, how do I pronounce that? Wyandotte County, Kansas from 1985 to 1990, and an assistant United States attorney for the District of Arizona, where she served as a criminal deputy chief. She served in the executive office for the U.S. attorneys at the Department of Justice in Washington, D.C. from 1998 to 2000, and was the director of that office beginning in 1999. She maintains chambers in Phoenix, but travels extensively for oral arguments and other court business. In addition to hearing cases, as Chief Judge, Judge Murguia's responsibilities include a variety of administrative duties. She chairs 2 judicial policymaking bodies, the Executive Committee of the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals and the Judicial Council of the Ninth Circuit. She also represents the Ninth Circuit at biannual meetings of the Judicial Conference of the United States, the Judiciary's national governing body. As chief judge, she presides when an 11-judge en banc court is convened to resolve cases posing intra-circuit legal conflicts or to consider other matters deemed to be of exceptional importance. Please join me in welcoming Judge Murguia. Thank you very much. And to her left, we have Judge Kim Wardlaw. President William Jefferson Clinton nominated Judge Wardlaw to the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals on January 27, 1998. She was confirmed by the United States Senate on July 31st, 1998, and was appointed to the court on August 3rd, 1998. Judge Wardlaw had previously served on the United States District Court for the Central District of California since January 3rd, 1996. Before joining the district court, she was a litigation partner at the international law firm O'Melveny & Myers and was based in Los Angeles. There, she enjoyed a general business litigation practice with special emphasis in intellectual property and media defense law. While in private practice, Judge Wardlaw served in various offices of the Women Lawyers Association of Los Angeles, the Women Lawyers Public Action Grant Foundation, and the Association of Business Trial Lawyers, from which she resigned as an officer upon assuming the bench. Also, while in private practice, Judge Wardlaw was involved in numerous community, political, and governmental activities, taking leaves of absence from her practice to join the Clinton-Gore presidential transition team, where she worked in the United States Justice Department, and serving as Mayor-elect Richard Riordan's government liaison during his mayoral transition. Judge Wardlaw graduated summa cum laude and Phi Beta Kappa from UCLA with an AB in Communication Studies in 1976. She obtained her JD in 1979 from UCLA Law School, where she was awarded Order of the Coit and named Outstanding Graduate of the Class of 1979. She was a legal extern during law school for the late Honorable Joseph T. Sneed III of the United States Court of Appeals for the Ninth Circuit, and upon graduation, she clerked for the Honorable William P. Gray of the United States District Court for the Central District of California. She lives with her husband, William Wardlaw, and their two children, William Jr. and Catherine Ann, in Pasadena. Please welcome, or assist me in welcoming Judge Wardlaw to the panel. And to her left, last but certainly not least, is Judge Consuelo Callahan, and we refer to her as Connie Callahan. Judge Callahan currently sits on the United States Circuit Court for the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals. She was appointed by George W. Bush in May of 2003 after unanimous confirmation by the Senate. Prior to her appointment to the federal bench, Judge Callahan was a state judicial officer from 1986 to 2003, serving on both the trial and appellate courts. She began her judicial career as commissioner of the Stockton Municipal Court and was subsequently appointed judge of the San Joaquin County Superior Court and justice of the California Court of Appeal for the 3rd Appellate District. Before then, Judge Callahan was a deputy city attorney and deputy district attorney, specializing in the prosecution of career criminal, child abuse, sexual assault, and homicide cases. As a state court judge, she was active in court governance and training as a board member of the California Judges Association. She also participated in the presentation of numerous programs sponsored by the Center for Judicial Training and Research. Judge Callahan is a co-author of the Rudder Group's California Practice Guide, Employment Litigation. In addition, she served as a regent for the University of the Pacific from 2005 to 2014, and in 2022 rejoined the board. She is a current trustee for Western University of Health Sciences and the American Inns of Court, where she serves as chair and president, respectively. Judge Callahan has been honored as the 2005 Alumna of the Year by McGeorge School of Law, 2006 Sacramento Judge of the Year, 2008 a BOTA Humanitarian Judge of the Year. She is also a 2009 Athena Award recipient and a 2014 American Inns of Court Ninth Circuit Professionalism Award recipient. She's also the 2016 Judge Armendariz Award recipient, the 2017 University of the Pacific Alumni Award recipient for Distinguished Public Service, the 2023 St. Thomas More Award, and the 2024 Alumni Distinction Award. Judge Callahan received her AB from Stanford University, her JD from McGeorge School of Law, and her LLM from the University of Virginia School of Law. Please join me in welcoming Judge Callahan. And now I would like to pass it over to Cynthia Jones so that she can moderate the panel. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Judge Alba. Well, welcome everyone. Good afternoon. I said good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
So we are so fortunate to have this panel here today, and so fortunate to have had Alba in Seattle, which is a rarity. I hope some of you have been able to take in some of those arguments. But with the time, I want to jump right in. So good afternoon to all of you. And as we were preparing, we talked about a lot of territory, but I'm going to start with you, Judge Callahan. And we're going to try to make this a conversation. But we all talked about what it was that drew each of you to the law, and in particular, what was the seminal moment or moments from your upbringing, from your background, that made you want to even enter the practice of law?
I think what appealed to me about the law was that I saw it as, you know, coming from sort of an immigrant background. My mother didn't speak English till she went to school. And my grandparents, you know, didn't, well, the most educated went through 8th grade and the least educated was probably 2nd grade. And so education was really important, but I saw the law as something powerful. And my Spanish grandfather always wanted a lawyer. And I was always kind of a little kid, and I think I thought, well, I'm not going to win any fights as far as that goes. I was pretty smart, but I figured I need to have some power to make a difference. And I saw the law as the great equalizer and education that way. And I think that when I graduated from high school, I remember telling one of my high school friends' parents, who was a judge, that I was either going to be an English teacher or I was going to go to law school. And in law school, I just realized no one's going to listen to me as an English teacher, and I need someone to listen to me. So that's really what appealed to me about the law. And I also recognized about my own personality that I needed a job where I could be the boss, that I didn't always have to have a boss, where I could have some autonomy. And I think I was a little bit of a fighter, and I wanted to help people. And I felt that this would be a vehicle to be able to do that, and it had great appeal to me that way. And so I think it was an evolution as far as that goes, but I think that I just realized, and as you can probably tell by our CVs here, I'm older than the other two women here. So maybe I'm the oldest person in the entire room. It's hard to know. And I describe myself as an OG, an original gangster. But there were not a lot of women in law when I was entering it. So many of the things about that is I realized I had really felt marginalized a lot of my life and my career, although my parents were very encouraging. And it just seemed like this would be a way that I would be able to, I could get on equal footing. And if I was willing to work and if I was smart, I would be able to, establish myself. So I didn't have a job when I graduated from law school. I got one very quickly, and I never have been unemployed since that time. But I think a lot of the things that I did were more what was available at the time, and I used it as a stepping stone to sort of do the next thing. So I would like to tell you that I had everything planned out. But I think more than anything else, I knew myself, and I knew I needed to be in a situation where I would have some autonomy and some authority, and the law seemed to answer that.
So what I've heard you call Judge Wardlaw in the past is your sister from a different mother. And so we're going to move to Judge Wardlaw and ask the same question. Have you elaborate on your own seminal moment?
Irish twins.
Yes, right.
She's the most confident one. So I'm actually very similar, have a similar background to Judge Wardlaw. Is this working well? No? Okay. Okay, maybe I do need to pick it up. I have a very similar background to Judge Callahan's in that my parents were intermarried. Both sets were immigrants. My Scottish Irish grandparents came in through Ellis Island, what they used to call the legal way. And my Mexican grandparents, when they came to the United States, they actually lived in both their ranch in Jalisco, Mexico, and in a ranch at San Bernardino. And there actually was no border. So they would just go back and forth. And they ultimately settled in Victorville, California. And my parents met each other in San Francisco. My mother was told she wasn't allowed to go to college. And so she went to work right out of high school at the I Magnin in San Francisco, which was a very prestigious job back then. And she waited on all the fancy ladies of San Francisco with all the white gloves and all that. But she met my father, and he had been in the Navy, and they got married. But the thing was, in the 50s, it was considered an interracial marriage. And so it wasn't, it had to be approved by all sorts of people, including people in the Catholic Church and other people, and people looked down on it. It was all about what are the children going to look like? That was the big fear. Well, so anyway, so fast forward, my mother's raising me in the 50s and 60s in mostly, somewhat in San Francisco, mostly in San Jose, where all of the rest of her family lived. And like Judge Callahan, she said, education is the key. You're going to go to college, although a lot happened along the way. And at one point I had to drop out, but then I got to come back. But the law for me was a way to equalize things. And I thought that I could do some good for other people with the lessons I had learned and the inequalities in society that I had seen. And so I sort of gravitated toward the law. I mean, I wasn't really sure I was going to do the law. Like Judge Callahan, I wasn't sure. I majored in communication studies, and I thought I might be a broadcast journalist. And then I took a class in legal communications. It was all about the First Amendment. And I decided to write my senior thesis on the family viewing hour, which was it became a federal case before the Central District of California. And I went to court every day. And I said, not only am I going to go to do the law, I'm going to be a judge, and a federal judge at that. And so that's sort of what happened. I just decided I can do this for some reason, and went for it.
So I'm hearing a theme of an equalizer in the law, and I'm wondering, Chief, if that held true for you. What was your seminal moment?
Yes, I would say it's a lot of similarities. I'm a little bit younger, not much, from my colleagues here, but I benefit from their wisdom. First, I just want to thank you all for coming to hear our journey to the law. I think it's really wonderful to put on this kind of program, and I thank Robin and Cynthia for coordinating this event. And my journey is really not that much different, although my parents were from Mexico, a small town in Michoacan, Mexico. And my father was actually born in Oklahoma, but when the Depression came, and he'd gone to school maybe, till about the 4th grade, but the Depression came, and so the family decided they'd go back to Mexico and kind of weather the Depression there in their hometown. And then later he came and reported for service for World War II, and then he sent for my mom, and he ended up in Kansas, of all places, because there were a couple of people he knew from the small town in Michoacan who were working at the railroad, at the ice plant, and he got a job there, but neither of my parents were able to pursue any kind of formal education. It's interesting, my mother's mother passed away when she was 13, so she only went to the 6th grade, and my father's father passed away when he would have been essentially in the 8th grade. So they both had to end their education, but I think they really, and not through telling us how important it was, just they communicated in a lot of different ways how important education would be. And yes, we figured out that would really provide a fair and level playing field for us if we were able to pursue an education. They believed in the power of education. And so I think that really reverberated with all my siblings. I'm the youngest of 7. I have an identical twin sister, and she's 6 minutes older than I am. And I think looking back, a couple of the stories that I think probably influenced me more than I even realized were the fact that when my father went to work at the steel plant, he ended up working over 35 years at the Kansas City structural steel plant. Initially, they would not let him go to the same bathroom as whites. He and other people of color, they were told, even though Brown versus Board of Education had passed, that was not the culture in the steel plant. And so, and then when they went to the movie theater, they had to sit in a separate section. And so we, heard of these stories, and I say we because eventually more than just I went to law school in my family. And I think they did have an impact. And there was one story in particular where my father spoke about when he came over, he didn't have his birth certificate with him. He had a baptismal certificate from this small town, Dewey, Oklahoma, where he was born. And he ended up having to go before a judge. And he told the judge, here in the United States, I was born in Oklahoma, and here's my baptismal certificate. And the judge said, I'm going to let you go, bring me your birth certificate. Come back, show me your birth certificate, and then I'll let you stay. He didn't detain him. And that just really, and my dad told us that story, and he said that was a fair judge. And I think looking back, again, this is kind of more of a look back, I think that really was in the back of my mind, but I just never thought being a judge was really possible, because nobody in our family had been a judge, and nobody had pursued any kind of education until my siblings and, my parents spoke Spanish to us. I grew up speaking Spanish, and English was, our second language. But my dad always said, in Spanish, there's a saying, aquí en los Estados Unidos, el sol sale para todos. And that what that means is here in the United States, the sun shines for everyone. And so I think that really gave us the power to hope and to believe that we could do something beyond, just, going on to pursue an education and maybe doing something that we cared about. And I went ahead and pursued the law.
So let's stay with you for a moment, Chief. You talked about this story of this fair judge. When was it that you knew you wanted to be a judge?
Well, I did not know that until I was approached by a senator from Arizona and said, would you consider being a judge in Arizona? I've been a federal prosecutor in Arizona. I was working back at Maine Justice. I was director of the Executive Office for U.S. Attorneys, which was acting really as a liaison between the 92 field U.S. Attorney's offices and all the components at Maine Justice and the AG and the DAG. And I had been a prosecutor at the state level in Kansas and then at the federal level in Arizona. And I just never saw it as a real possibility. And there was an opening, as you heard from the introduction. They had 3 positions in Arizona based on the number of cases. And Congressman approached me first, and then I got a call from then got Senator Kyle, and he reached out and just said, would you consider being a judge? And, you know, it's an offer that you just have to really consider. And there was no, there'd never been a Latina judge in Arizona. I just, you know, based on the population there, it seemed important. And I also thought it would be an incredible honor and privilege.
So Judge Wardlaw, we heard you say when you were in law school, or even maybe before you wanted to be a judge. Yeah.
So when I went to my first week at UCLA Law School, because by then I had externed on the Ninth Circuit and I had attended this federal district court trial about the First Amendment and written about it. And so I answered a questionnaire that they distributed. The question was, what do you plan to do with your law degree? And I just said, well, I plan to be a federal judge. And they were so incredulous. You know, you can't plan to be a federal judge. It's just that I was so naive. I thought, well, you know, I didn't even know how you became a federal judge. So at all, I didn't understand the process required a presidential appointment and confirmation by the Senate. You know, I just knew it said, how do you plan? And so I really, from that point, I wanted to be a judge. But since it was clearly, it's such a lightning striking kind of thing that I knew I had to build a career and work really hard and do other things. So I went into litigation and went to a big national firm and became a litigation partner. And in fact, when I met your husband, Paul Lawrence, today, he said, I remember you. You were social director at Melvin Myers when I was a summer associate. And I said, no, I was vice chair of the employment committee. And so the first time a woman had been vice chair of the employment committee, by the way. But so it was kind of a great thing. But so I let it be known that I wanted to be a judge. And so I was a Democrat and I was active politically. I worked on campaigns. And so when I graduated from law school, for 16 years in the state of California, there were Republican appointed governors. And for 12 years for the president, there had been Republican presidents who had been elected. So 1992 was my first chance to even apply to be a judge. It was when President Clinton was elected, and the two senators who were elected from California were the two women. And it was, in fact, the election was called the Year of the Woman because women voters would decide it. And they elected the largest number of United States senators who were women in history. And so I applied to the two committees. And I'll just tell one little story on that. So I was rejected by Senator Boxer's committee. And I later found out it's because my husband and I both worked to elect Dick Verdin mayor, and he was a Republican. So, you know, the politics was like going back and forth. But then I interviewed with Senator Feinstein's committee, and she was more moderate, and she didn't mind, you know, not recommending someone who had also worked for a Republican, even though the race was nonpartisan, but still, there are principles. And so she recommended me to President Clinton for the position I got on the district court.
Well, I didn't figure out I wanted to be a judge until I was a trial lawyer. I worked in the public defender's office briefly, hated losing, and decided this was not for me, and became, but then I applied to both, and the DA's office offered me a job the day before. And as I realized that I was much happier winning, and I liked having the authority to decide who was being prosecuted, not just being, it wasn't, I believe that everyone's entitled to a fair trial. and I enjoyed my public defender days, but I realized I was better suited to be a DA. So I sat in a courtroom, and I was in court every day. I did 70 jury trials as a DA, and I would sit there looking at. So you see a lot of judges, and I thought, that doesn't look that hard. And I think I can do that. I think you're going to probably notice a little bit of confidence and a little bit of cockiness on my part somehow. No, I don't know where it came from, but my parents instilled a certain amount of confidence. I don't think I'm cocky, but I was a very good trial lawyer, and I realized at some point that I thought that would be a natural extension. But the only problem was I'd never been political. I lived in a place called Stockton, California. It was a small community. My parents, our idea of being political was voting. And so the first time I applied for a judgeship, it didn't really go anywhere. The second time it didn't really go anywhere. And then the person that became a judge, I got to be a commissioner. It's like Judge Judy. So I was really out there doing traffic, small claims, and really a person of the people. And I realized someone said to me, one of my first bosses, says, "No, what's wrong with you, Callahan?" And I'm like, "No, what?" And he goes, "You think you can succeed on merit alone?" And I thought to myself, well, that's kind of ridiculous. Yeah, I do. But I realized he was saying something, there are politics involved in that. I'm the only Republican up here. I may be an endangered species, certainly in California at this point, but I was in the time period when there were 12 years of Republican governors. But I never did anything political. I never worked for a governor. I never worked for a president. And I don't like politics. And even though when I had to run as a state judge, that was the most horrific thing. I didn't even like running for school elections. I mean, it's just terrible. But I think by coincidence, one of the biggest Republicans in the United States lived in Stockton. And so I realized I don't have to get political if I can get support from someone that does have political gravitas, because I really felt like I had the substance, I had the training, I had the substance to do the job. But and as it turns out, ultimately, I was able to get the support of that individual. And like Judge Wardlaw said, the year of the woman, I was just enough ahead of this that it was men that helped me early in my career, because they were the people that were in the positions of power to recommend me in those positions. So I've had women help me throughout my career, but I've had men help me really in the beginning. That was a pivotal moment for me, getting that support, because I always could do the job, but I needed the support politically. And I was very slow out of the starting blocks, and it took me a time to be a judge, but then somehow it kind of accelerated along the way. And then I was the first woman appointed to the San Joaquin County Superior Court. Then it was good that I was a woman. I was the first Latina. And then when I wanted to go to the DCA, suddenly all the things that had been barriers for me turned out to be advantages, because I was there at a particular time. And then the Ninth Circuit, I never really had any interest, unlike my colleague Judge Wardlaw, to be a federal judge. I kind of, the Ninth Circuit, I kind of heard of it as the Ninth Circus. So it wasn't something I aspired to be. And then they came to me and they said, "Well, would you come back to," first they asked me to be the U.S. attorney. And I said no. And then they kept twisting my arm about that. I said, "I like my job already." Then the White House counsel called and said, "Would you come back and at least interview?" And I said, I'm not even really interested. Just come back. We're talking to other people. And so I think it's like the girl that has a lot of dates. It was like I wasn't really interested. And at the time, I think that made me more appealing. And I also think that you heard I was confirmed 99-0 unanimously. And the reason for that was, I don't think I was anyone's favorite. I don't think I was President Bush's favorite. I don't think we had 2 Democratic senators. I don't think I was their favorite. But I think I was acceptable. And so I tell people sometimes you don't always have to be someone's favorite. You can be someone that's confirmable and that can carry the water. And so there's a lot of paths to that. And so that, in fact, which turned the federal confirmation can be the hardest. And in fact, that was my easiest. Becoming commissioner and getting my first superior court was really the hardest for me because I had no political juice. And to this day, even if I could endorse a political candidate, I don't want to be involved in politics. I love the law. I love my job, and I think it's just part of the world, and I accept that. But I'm really happy to be appointed for life and in good behavior in a job that I can just do wonderful legal issues, and I don't have to look for another job.
So I wanted to say, I was confirmed unanimous consent twice too, that I don't know why, so.
If I could add that I also confirmed twice unanimously.
So Judge Callahan, would you be willing to, and I'm going to ask this of all of you, to talk to the lawyers out there that are aspiring to become judges, what it was like to go from advocate to neutral, to go on the bench?
You know, I really didn't find that difficult because I think particularly as a prosecutor, if you're a good prosecutor, you have to see both sides of the case. You should not charge people unless you absolutely have the evidence. And like I said, I don't really like to lose, but I also have a moral compass. And so I think I really was very objective in evaluating the evidence. I think it's a little more difficult to make that transformation when you have when you've really say represented employers or just represented employees, or you've had a specific area. I didn't find that hard, but what I found hard is judging's a lot harder than I thought it was. Like I said, I looked, and good judges make it look a lot easier. And I was actually astounded that even though I had done capital cases as a prosecutor, I had argued, for very long prison terms, for death sentences, for all of those things. Sentencing was a lot harder for me than I expected. When it's the real thing and you're the last person, and you're at this point when someone's been convicted, you've got the mother of someone, you've got a victim, particularly in heinous crimes, you've got someone that maybe the murder victim's family, all of that, and everyone is looking at you, and it's just tremendously, the pain is palpable in a courtroom, and somehow you have to make sense of all of that, what's right in that case for all of society, for the crime that's been committed, and I thought I was really ready for it because I'd lived in the courtroom and I'd been around all of this, but it was just a lot harder when I was the backstop and I was the final say, and everyone was looking at me with these sad, empty eyes and trying to figure out what the right thing to do. So it really, I tell people, good judges make it look easy, but when you actually have to make these decisions, they weigh with you, they stay with you, and you really think about it, and you're really trying to do and even though we may not always come to the same conclusion, I can honestly say of my colleagues, they're doing their honest best to get to the right answer. And that is really hard.
Judge Wardlaw?
Oh, I'm sorry, the question was advocate.
So what I had asked is, I'm thinking about all the lawyers in our community, and we also have across the Ninth Circuit, you may remember, we are broadcasting this live to about 100 people. And I would just like them to hear from all of you about that. As lawyers going from an advocate position to the bench, what was that transition like? What would you say to lawyers today?
Well, my transition was really abrupt, I would say. I was a litigator, I was in courtrooms, I advocated as an associate and as the only woman. I argued motions in major national litigation, and and like up against, the top of the legal profession in the community. And so I was used to doing the best I could to put together an argument based on the facts that were, the best facts possible that you could pick out and pull together, and best law possible. And I was in my element really more doing the research and analysis, but in writing. But I had to do the advocating. So first week at the court, I go to the district court, and the other thing is being at O'Melveny. I mean, I had a library that would do research for me, and I had 10 people doing my word processing, and I had support up the wazoo, personal assistant, corner front office on the 15th floor. I mean, it was great. So I go by myself, and I go to the district court, and they say, "Oh, you're on the will. You're going to be doing some criminal things today, criminal matters today." And I'm like, well, I don't even have a road. So, and I didn't have a staff, and I didn't have any support, and they didn't even have internet. And it was, I mean, granted, PCs had just come in recently, so, I am a lot older than all of you. But so I borrowed a robe from Connie Marshall, a district court judge in the Central District. And I went out there, and there's all these people in the courtroom, and it was just me sitting there. And I had been on teams of litigators. I mean, there was a lot of support for what I was doing. Now it was just me, and I was going to have to decide. And like Judge Callahan, and I also like Judge Murguia, I took that really seriously and really researched things on my own. I hadn't even hired law clerks yet, and tried to figure it out. And I really would have made a lot of mistakes had it not been for the U.S. attorneys who, when I was about to veer off and do something wrong, they'd correct me and say, "Hey, Judge, you're supposed to do this colloquy here." And I'd be okay. I had never done criminal law. So it was just a shock to be out there doing that. And, but I adjusted pretty quickly. And I learned that, first, what I learned was the most important thing is preparation and organization. And I had already done that. I knew how to be prepared. I knew how to be organized. I knew how to present. And I knew what to do in a courtroom. So that all came in helpful. And I guess finally I would just say the hardest thing for me too as a district court judge was sentencing. But I didn't seek out the Ninth Circuit. It was not something that was a federal judge was it. It wasn't a Ninth Circuit judge. And I literally think I was asked too soon to be elevated to the Ninth Circuit. I would have preferred to have more years on the district court and become more better at that. And so but once, as Judge Murguia said, once someone asks you to consider, would you like to be a Ninth Circuit judge? It's not something you don't consider, that you take lightly. And so I agreed. And, 2 years and 9 months after entering that courtroom by myself, suddenly I was up on the Ninth Circuit and having to deal with 2 other judges all the time, and not getting my way. And, suddenly I wanted to really go back to the district court. But so yeah, both transitions have been difficult.
Judge Murguia?
Yeah, no, I would echo both what Judge Callahan and Judge Wardlaw say, because when you first become a judge, especially a district court judge, you're alone in making the decision. You have a lot of help from the lawyers, obviously. But I remember as a prosecutor, when I was at a sentencing, I'd advocate, say my piece, and then I'd sit down. And then I'd hear the other side, and I'm like, wow, that's interesting. Wow, I wonder what the judge is going to do. And then you're the judge, and you feel the full weight of it. And it's the most sobering of experiences. And, in any sentencing, you know. Obviously, there's some serious crimes, but you're affecting the life of the person in front of you and all those that were involved, and you feel it. And if you don't feel it, then I just wonder if you should be a judge, because it is serious. But probably, you know, the more interesting transition and probably more difficult was going from being a district court judge to the circuit, to the Court of Appeals, because I've been on the district court for 10 years, and in Arizona we had a very high caseload. You know, not unlike the state court in California or the district court in Central District, but a really high caseload, and you're moving and you're making decisions, and you know you're filling it, and then you're off to the next case, and you get to the circuit, and I'm like, I had already decided that, and then all of a sudden somebody is telling me, oh, but that's still not done, and I'm like, well, how is that not done? And they're like, oh, well, this judge is saying, you know, and we're like, oh my God. So it's, you know, judging with other people, it's, I think it's really helpful because we have complicated matters and you want the help. And even if there are differing views, you know that it's in an effort, everybody, as Judge Callahan said, is to get the just result, or at least in your view, what the just result is. But it is very different when you have to, you know, advocate your position and why you think what you're saying, you know, might be the better outcome, or, you know, let's consider that. It's very different. And so I found both of them, you know, challenging, but yeah, I felt like the growth personally and professionally was also significant from those experiences.
So I'm going to pivot us to a question we talked about when we were preparing with Robin Lipsky, Executive Director of the Historical Society for the Ninth Circuit. We were talking about the challenges through the lens of your ethnic identity. And what was really surprising about that conversation when we got into it is that it was really the challenges were more through the lens of your gender identity. And I wondered if the three of you would talk about that, starting with Judge Callahan.
Well, for me, it definitely, the problem of being a woman in a profession where there were very few women in the beginning was my biggest impediment. And so that's where I felt, you know, I can tell you things that people said to me back in the day. And I can tell you being in a courtroom, people would, you know, I think that, you know, I was 25 years old and I was trying cases, and you know, I was this young, cute thing, and it was just like, and it was very frustrating for me to be marginalized like that. But then I turned it into something that I thought, well, you know, you're not going to see me coming, and I am going to kick your, you know what, and then when the verdict comes in, you know, you're gonna be kind of embarrassed here. And so I learned very early on that, and I think it's really true. That was my first impediment, I think. But like sometimes things that, you know, if you wait long enough, sometimes things that are a disadvantage end up to be an advantage, because when they finally look for someone that you're there, you know, hi, I'm here, I've been working really hard at this. And sometimes when people don't give things to you and they challenge you, I think it's okay to have a little bit of a chip on your shoulder, because I think it makes you work harder. And I think there's nothing wrong with having to prove yourself, and it does build your confidence. And part of the reason that I like doing trial work was because you get responses. I mean, you can actually, if you convince 12 people that you're right, you're thinking like, okay, I know what I'm doing, and you do that over a period of time. So for me, it was more being a woman, and I think people can't necessarily, because Kim and I are basically half Irish and half Latina. And so I don't know that that was the immediate identification, but of course I was Consuelo Maria, which was, you know, I had to change my name to Connie because my teachers insisted on calling me Consuela because I was a girl. And I said, no, Consuelo means consolation. I'm pretty sure I know that that's what my name is. And so there was always kind of a constant push and pull about that. But I think, you know, I think in the end, I see with all of you sitting out there, and I've had law clerks and generationally, everyone in their life has challenges. And one of the things that I've really come to when I look back at the challenges that, like my grandmother, for example, she was born in Spain. She went to the Hawaiian Islands. They had to go as indentured servants. Her sister died. They came to this country. There were 6 kids. Her mother died in childbirth. Her dad was dead by the time she was 10. My grandfather at 14 left Spain, never saw his parents again, you know, and they lost a child. And all of the things that you see that people went through in the past, you know, a lot of our problems are really, you know, I guess I could put them in perspective at this point. Yes, they're issues, but we have a lot of avenues to I think, overcome those barriers. And to me, it's made me really much more helpful, much more hopeful. And I think you have to try to not get bitter about things, that when you don't get things, like I said, did I not get things because I was a woman? Sure. But did I get some things because I was a woman and I didn't give them back? You know, that's the, you know, life is a process. So for those of you that are young and you're starting, whatever you have to overcome, you can do it. But sometimes it's not straight up. It's this way, this way, that way. But you can do it. Judge Wardlaw.
So, my law school class was about 40% women, but my class at Albany was maybe a quarter women. And when I arrived at Albany, there was one woman partner, and the clubs were discriminatory. If the male partners all went to them anyway and held the meetings there or golfed or took the male associates. So I had all the classic barriers in place. But I will also say this, there were no African American partners. There was no diversity. And I really think that it was so challenging. And yes, becoming a partner, I feel that there were certain challenges and things I had to accomplish that I had to prove myself, and the other women did too. Not very many women actually became at that time litigation partners at Albany Myers. And but it was difficult, and there were clients at that time that didn't want to work with women, and they'd say so, and management would accede to that. They wouldn't say, no, you have to work with a woman because the client was paying. So there was, you know, the legal business pressures. There was also just general like hostility toward women and the challenges that were thrown out there. But I do think that everybody, like Judge Callahan said, that there are challenges for everybody. I'm really happy to see that the legal world is more diverse now, and I'm very happy with the new diversity on our court, the recent diversity on our court, and even diversity in every way. I'm talking about backgrounds. Lo and behold, we now have district court judges who worked in the public interest and were public defenders. So, but I think each person faces their own challenges in their own ways. My thing was I had to be I almost left a few times. I almost went to the U.S. Attorney's Office at one point. I almost changed law firms at a couple points because it is at times discouraging. But I didn't do that. I persevered and got the reward. And then I found out once you become a partner in a major law firm, you work even harder and you have more responsibility and more pressures because then you're supposed to bring in the business. But thank God, 1992 came along. That's all I have to say.
What about you, Chief?
Well, I think that there are challenges and hurdles that we all confront, and I think that, Judge Callahan and Judge Wardlaw, and then I was in Kansas, it was not very diverse. There weren't very many women, especially, women of color, practicing law in Kansas City at the time that I was there. And so there were attitudes, I guess, that were not positive. And so, but you have to figure out how to navigate around it. And I don't know, it's interesting because today, I hear that sometimes, you should confront people and just tell them, hey, you can't do that. But, that's going to affect maybe your trajectory. At least I thought that if you wanted to advance, and I think you just have to really figure out what is it that you can say at this point, and then hope that you can get to a position of power, that you can effectuate change, because doing that at that point, I don't know who's going to listen to me. And I think it's just being aware of your circumstances and what is it that you can do to get to the other side of that problem. And then hopefully once you're on the other side of that problem and you can get to a position of policy making, or at least being able to impart. And I think that's what has happened over time. Women have been able to navigate, and they probably had to suffer through some experiences that were less than optimal. But I think that's how we've had change, because I know I've benefited, and I would submit that you all have benefited from the experience of Judge Callahan and for where she is today, from the experiences of Judge Wardlaw and what she's overcome to get to here today. And I hope that what I've done will help somebody else, maybe you all, in trying to forge your path, forward. But it wasn't without submission. I'll give you one example, and it's, you run across this. I mean, and it was just like, it's really, it was more of like you're entering maybe a boys club that you don't know all the rules to, and you don't know who all's who, but obviously they know each other, and you're trying to figure out how to interact. This is way back. And, they're saying something that's really inappropriate about another woman, a woman juror. And so, but then the judge is engaged in it. So am I going to stop and say, hey, you all need to stop. That's offensive to me. You need to stop saying that because I'm offended by that. I didn't really say that. I didn't laugh. I kind of turned the conversation and said, no, I don't really want to comment on that. And then I got to a position within the district attorney's office back then that I could tell other people, hey, we're not going to comment on women jurors. And that needs to be a policy, okay? Make those kind of comments. And I think that's how change is. There's other ways that change can be made. I thought that was effective. Some people might be less patient than I was, but I do think that there have been some obstacles, but you have to figure out how to navigate around them. And I think do it in a way that you can eventually get to the other side and hopefully persevere and be in a position, hopefully, to make a difference.
So for the audience, we have about 10 minutes left, and then we're going to be convening in the courthouse lobby for a reception where there'll be some food and drink. But before we do, I'm going to ask one more question. I have lots of questions for this panel, but I want to give you all a chance to ask a question. So here's how we'll do that. If you have one, after I ask this last question, raise your hand and I'll repeat the question so that folks that are streaming online can hear the question, and then we'll have the panel answer that. So if you have one, now's the time to start thinking about that. So I would like to pivot this yet again and ask you all, starting with you, Chief, what brings you joy outside of the law?
Well, first, I will say that I have been so fortunate that I have loved every job that I've had. And I don't, I think it's a lot of it is, I just, based on the example my parents had of really working hard and trying to get along with other people, that I have just gotten so much joy from the jobs that I've had. I think the people that I've worked with, I've taken a team approach to things, and I have just been so fulfilled professionally, and I feel very grateful for that, because at every stage I've made really good friends within every job that I've had, and it has really been so gratifying. Outside of the law and outside of the work, I come from a big family, and I do a lot with my family, and we're all sports people. We follow sports very closely. I also, try to do physical activity outside of sitting at my desk, and enjoy really going out with friends and having dinner and being with my large family of siblings and nieces and nephews.
Okay, you opened the door. I have to know what's your number one all-time favorite sports team.
We all know.
This is being recorded.
I do support the Arizona Cardinals when they're playing, but my primary team for football is the Kansas City Chiefs. I had the pleasure of being at both of the Super Bowl wins recently here. And then I'm also a big Kansas basketball fan. So
Thank you for sharing that. I love Patrick Mahomes. All right, Judge Wardlaw, joy in the law, joy outside the law. In the law and outside.
I actually enjoy writing opinions. I really do. And I'm lucky that I really enjoy writing opinions, because that's what I do. Spend most of my time on. The other parts of the judging, I think, are less significant, because to see the major opinions that we get the opportunity to write, that we actually make our mark on the history and the courts. That my biggest joy is my family, but also with my family, doing a lot of things with them, like theater and sports and traveling, and I just wish my kids would, find a partner and maybe have grandkids. I hear that's pretty joyful. I don't know if you're watching this recording, but I think I'm very fortunate to love what I'm doing, and also I love my law clerks too, and you should know that.
Judge Callahan.
Well, I think I've loved every day of my career practically. I can count on one hand the bad days I've had. My kids have given me many more bad days. But outside of I see myself right now, having done this as long as I have, mentoring has always been important to me, but I find myself really at a point where I've done so many different things that it's very joyful for me to help other people become judges, or help other, talk, or help people get into colleges, or, I work with students, both, not just, I've branched into medicine, helping people get into medical school too. But I really find that I derive a lot of joy about seeing success for other people, and helping people with things that I've learned along the way to help them get that edge so that they can have those achievements. And so I would consider that one of my biggest joys. I do have a grandchild, and that's great. And outside of work, I'm a tap dancer. I like to do things. I like to do things that challenge me. I don't like to feel like I'm afraid of doing something. I've done skydiving twice. I'm a surfer now for one day. I just had court in Hawaii, and I signed up for a private, and I told the surf instructor, he was a darling Hawaiian man that was the surfer. And I said, look, you have one job. I want to get up and I want photos. And I said, what are my odds? you know, as I told you, I don't like to lose. I said 50-50, he said, no, 100%. And I got out, I have pictures. And so, you know, I think I like to stay optimistic. I like to feel, you know, I like to help other people. And I do think that it makes me sound selfless, and that's not true because I get so much joy back from it. So there's a selfishness about it. But I do think to the extent, whether it's your family, whether it's anyone that you can help, you don't regret, you know, I've really found in life, you don't regret the things that you've done. You regret the things you didn't do and the opportunities that presented themselves, and that maybe you didn't help someone and take the time that you could have. So that's what keeps me happy and joyful. And it truly is an honor to have the jobs that we have. And we all know that. We've made light of certain things, but don't ever think for a second. I mean, we're serious as a heart attack about these jobs, and we feel incredibly honored to have this opportunity. And be kind to us and have mercy on us, because once I became a judge, I realized I will never be an expert again in anything. There are so many types of cases, there are so many different things, and that's where your work comes in. We are experts in finding the answer, but there are certain areas of law that I know everything about. There are other areas of law that I go, I need to be able to decide this case in 2 months, and I've got to figure everything out about it. So we need your help to do our jobs well. And it's very challenging when you were really good at something before, and now suddenly every day you get up, there's a new thing that you've never seen before. But it's really intellectually stimulating.
So I think we have time for a question, if anyone has a burning question out there. Yes.
So I just want to say thank you. I'm a first generation Latina law student, and it means a lot for me to see you up there. It gives me a lot of confidence, and it's very inspiring. I just want to know what's something that you wish you would have known sooner, earlier on in your career, that you don't take for granted now.
So the question is, what's something that you wish you would have known earlier, that you know now in your career? And anyone.
Don't let people define you. Know yourself. And at the biggest mistakes I've ever made is when I've had a crisis of confidence because of something that's happened and I haven't been true to myself. You know yourself, and you know, look at the world objectively, but don't let other people tell you what you can and cannot do. You know, if you think, you know who you are, you know what you want, and go after it. And don't let the world tell you who you should be, or wait for someone to come knocking at the door and say, what's your name? What's your name?
Zenia.
What?
Zenia Child.
Oh, well, don't wait and say like, hey, you know, you're sitting at home in your, you know, PJs watching TV. They're not going to call you to the Ninth Circuit. You got to get out there and you got to let people see what you can do.
You need to trust yourself and take risks. I think sometimes, you know, there may have been some hesitation, and I feel like, oh, maybe I lost out on that opportunity, and you just need to kind of trust yourself. And it's an interesting balance. My dad used to say it this way, you know, he said, you know better than anyone else, but you know less than anyone else either. And you just have to be able to, for me, I think what's been really important is to stand up for yourself, but also be respectful, acknowledge other people, be nice. I think all of the panelists up here would agree that, you know, we got through this whole intense process. It's not because of what people who we work with and who we were close to and who are our friends and allies said about us. It's what the people who said about us who we were opposing counsel with that really probably made the difference. Because it's those people and what they said about us, like, yeah, we disagreed, but I respect that, you know, that person, and they were always, you know, honest and straightforward. Even though we had disagreements and we had a week-long trial or a 3-week-long trial, I enjoyed advocating against that person for the reasons that they were, you know, helpful and honest, and we were able to work things out. And that's what I want to send a message to you about, is the importance of just being respectful and nice. You don't have to be a pushover, but it's working out differences in a manner that's agreeable, that you can come up with a solution. You're not always going to be successful, but for me, the best trial that I had, and it was emblematic, I thought of kind of what I'm talking about, is when it was a complex patent litigation. And the lawyers came to me, there was about 24 motions that had to be resolved. They came forward to the bench and they said, Judge, we've worked out, 19 of the issues. We've come to an agreement, but we can't agree on the other, 4 or 5. And so you're gonna have to decide. We all can give you our views, you're gonna have to decide it. And I just thought, that's beautiful when that happens, and that they can work out. And then I've also had the experience for discovery disputes, and people are sending these letters that you were just like, are people in junior high or are they professional lawyers? And I just think the importance, since you're all, lawyers interested in the law, of advancing forward, but do it in the most respectful way, I think it advances you a lot.
So the judge I externed for, Josie, was a staunch Republican conservative from Texas who had been Deputy Attorney General under Richard Nixon and left just before the Saturday Night Massacre. And I spent a semester with him, and he later on, fast forward to 1998, I was having some bumps in my confirmation process for the Ninth Circuit. And he wrote a letter saying that he remembered me, and that he thought I was most qualified to be on the Ninth Circuit, although he did not agree with me on anything that I said. So, but what I would also say is that you just work your hardest, do the best you can do, things will come, and try to stay optimistic about things, and don't let other people put you in corners that you think you shouldn't be in.
Well, thank you. I'm going to hand it over to Robin Lipsky, who wants to say a quick word.
I think one of the things we can all be unanimous about is what an amazing panel this has been, and how fortunate we have been here to have these incredible jurists here with us, and also the moderation of Cynthia Jones. So please join me in thanking you. The Ninth Circuit Historical Society, we're so glad that you're here with us. We would love to see you again. This is what we do. We try to help people understand the importance of an independent judiciary and who we are as a society and why the judiciary matters. We really hope you'll support the society. If you're not a member, get on our mailing list, make a donation, become a member. It's all very accessible, and we'd love to see you all at another program. Some of our other programming is off our website, njchs.org. So if you found this inspirational, I can guarantee you will also find other inspiration there as well. So please go to the website and see some of our other programming. And we'll love to see you again, starting right downstairs at the reception. So thank you so much for being here.